The team arrives at the dive site. Before diving, they must make way for an outgoing cargo ship. It passes right over the site of the wreck.
This was an active shipping channel, and after 100 years, we probably wouldn't find much. The Cubans had reportedly blasted the wreck away to clear the channel. And seeing that huge freighter pass directly over the site, Mike and I both felt that we wouldn't find much of anything, except perhaps a few pieces of steel.
With the gear checked and ready, John logs the time as the team starts their descent. It will now be up to James Delgado, the team's marine archaeologist, to positively identify this vessel and to once and for all put to rest the uncertainty of Merrimac's final resting place.
When we dropped into the water was murky and dark, and I was convinced we weren't going to find much of anything, that we'd be groping in the darkness, in the mud for fragments. And then, suddenly, out of the gloom appeared the stern, remarkably intact but also battle damaged. And that was exciting, because the rudder off to one side reminded me of Hobson's account of how, as Merrimac entered the channel, her steering had been shot away. I could almost see that rudder being knocked off on its pintles and coming to rest against the ship when she sank. As we dropped down that rudder, Mike's lights illuminated the propeller, and that was exciting to see. But even more exciting was the discovery that the top blade of the propeller was gone, seemingly shot away. Everything that we saw as we swam over that wreck was a surprise. We hadn't expected to see something this intact, and I hadn't expected to see something that was so clearly identifiable as Merrimac. Cargo hatches dropping into the interior, coal scuttles through which coal would have been passed, and shell holes in the sides and in the decks. One of which, as we looked at it, clearly had come from the stern, perhaps from an elevation, probably a shot fired from El Morro. The most amazing thing of all, though, was the realization, as we looked at the warped and twisted decks, that Merrimac had been afire. The coal inside her holds had to have been set ablaze by all the gunshots, and she'd burned for some time. Her decks had to have been white hot to get twisted the way they were, and only when the ship sank were those fires put out. What was also exciting, though, was of course being able to do science and to reach into one of the holes, into the coal hold, and to retrieve pieces of coal to take back to the laboratory for analysis.
The procedures for identifying a shipwreck take many forms. The coal which Jim is collecting will, when properly analyzed, provide important evidence. If it can be compared or fingerprinted to coal that Navy records indicate was supplied to Merrimac, then a vital new piece of information will be added to the puzzle.
As we moved forward, at the very tip of the bow, bent and twisted and lying in the mud, Mike and I dropped on down, and Mike flashed the camera down, and at the same time my flashlight hit anchor chain coming out and dropping down into the mud. And as I moved along and turned, there, sticking out of the mud, was the shank of the anchor. The ship sank at anchor. At that stage of the game, for me, there was no doubt. I had a ship loaded with coal, shot full of holes, that had burned intensely, that had sunk in the channel at the exact spot where the charts say she should be. And it's a riveted steel ship that's deep draft and strong. It was Merrimac.
Ooh, nice jump. Here it is. Let me tell you that the bow is still anchored onto the bottom.
Wow!
The whole ship is there. She's
Amazing. I didn't
the whole
expect
thing's
that.
there.
I
The whole
didn't
thing's there.
expect that.
Neither did I.
Unbelievable. So there was no major. Was anything trimmed other than the wheelhouse? So
So you can see some major explosions, but
was
yeah.
she held
the
together?
hull is all together. The keel's one piece.
Remarkable.
Yeah, there's all of
Absolutely
them, and it's the Merrimac.
wonderful.
There's coal scuttles. The steering gear is damaged. There's shell holes.
The rudder blown.
Yeah. Yeah. You see the rudder there? It's
That's the
twisted
whole
up.
Hobson story, right?
One
I mean,
one
that's
of the
just
main
remarkable.
buckets on the propellers busted right off. The top. Did you notice that, Jim?
Oh, yeah.
The top bucket's broken right
Yeah,
off.
sheared right off.
Later analysis of the coal sample results in more surprising news. The technicians announced that this coal had been exposed to heat intense enough to transform it into coke. For this transformation to have occurred, the coal must have been superheated, then suddenly quenched. For the sea hunters, this is further evidence that the wreck is that of the collier Merrimac, a ship that was set afire by thousands of rounds of enemy gunfire and burned ferociously before it and its cargo of coal plunged beneath the waves.
That